What if I were to tell you that most of the NFT market suffers from a gigantic blind spot that is likely to drive most people's portfolios to zero? It's a pretty strange thing to observe, particularly in this space. You'd think that a space like Web3 would not be subject to this kind of issue, but it is, in my view, to an extreme level. And maybe you are too. So listen up and make up your own mind whether this affects you. The critical problem that the NFT market suffers from is a form of extreme status quo bias, a belief that things will remain more or less the same as they have been for the last year and a half. This takes several forms, and it's important to recognize them and be aware of them. Keep watching to understand what I mean by this. Here's a quote that I love. It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. There are a lot of things in the NFT market that we know for sure, which we're not really aware of, but which form the basis of how we think about NFTs. And that can blind us to the rather less reliable reality that underpins all of this. Here's the first thing. Number one, the NFT market. The very expression, the NFT market, creates a blind spot. When people talk about the NFT market, it seems solid, it seems robust. It's like the stock market, which has existed for hundreds of years, or at least the crypto markets, which have existed for over a decade. Fact check. The NFT market is less than 2 years old at this point. Whatever it is, it has gone through one publisher cycle and then collapsed. There is no guarantee whatsoever that it continues to exist as a market. To be clear, I'm guilty of this too. I've been making charts, tracking the market, using terms like bull and bear and so on, treating it like it's a real little boy instead of what it is, a bunch of sticks stuck together with screws and glue and a bit of paint on top. We've all been contributing to this. And you know what? Maybe there is in fact an NFT market worth speaking of. Maybe it will develop and function like some sort of small and mid-cap stock market driven by NFTs. Maybe it will have its own bull and bear cycles. Maybe it's not just a single bubble event like the tulip mania in the 1600s, which arose once and then never came again. By the way, chatting to people in the NFT space, I realized that a surprising number of people don't know about the tulip mania. So here's a brief summary. Back in the 1630s, the Dutch, who had just invented this hot new thing called the stock market, got really enthusiastic about the price of tulip bulbs. That's the stuff that tulips grow out of. Some rare tulip bulb types reached extraordinary prices, like one rare bulb, one that would produce this tulip for example, would go for around 10 times the annual salary of a skilled artisan. Does that sound familiar yet? Here's a chart of tulip bulb prices during that period. By now you should start to ask yourself questions. To close this sidetrack, here's a quote from an 1841 book reviewing this disaster a few years later. Many individuals suddenly became rich. A golden bait hung temptingly out before the people, and one after the other they rushed to the tulip marts, like flies around a honeypot. Everyone imagined that the passion for tulips would last forever, and that the wealthy from every part of the world would send to Holland and pay whatever prices were asked of them. Does that sound familiar? Now, it's worth pointing out that the tulip mania lasted a few years and got some people rich and others wrecked, and is generally considered a bad thing, but the stock market, as an invention, powered the Dutch Empire for 100 years and the British Empire after that, and is generally regarded as an essential part of modern capitalism. So even if NFTs as a technology are a fundamental building block of the future, it could be that those PFP projects we've been enthusing about over the last couple of years are more like the tulip bulbs than like the stock market. Maybe that's true, but maybe not. And so let's start with this really fundamental building block, or lack thereof. Maybe there is an NFT market, comprising of PFPs and other assorted culture and startup-like projects. Or maybe there isn't. We can't know for sure. Only time will tell. Personally, I hope there will be. I think it could become a very powerful force for startup funding and innovation all around the world, and export the Silicon Valley model of abundant funding for anything that looks good. If we patch up some of the issues that enable dishonest founders to keep ripping off investors again and again, and if NFT investors wisen up a little, we can probably get there. But maybe I'm wrong about this, and there's no NFT market. Just a bunch of projects trading a bunch of different things, and some sort of Ponzi-fueled tulip bubble that happened once in 2021 and had an echo in early 2022, and now it's over. That's possible. Let that sink in. And make sure that however you're invested, you can survive that outcome too. Also, make sure that you tulip that like button and subscribe to this channel if you like this video, because I'm going to be making more videos like this and you don't want to miss them. Number 2, the bull and bear market cycle. Another assumption which I'm also totally guilty of embracing is the idea that this NFT market, even if it exists, goes through bull and bear cycles. To be clear, I'm not denying that there was some time in late summer 2021 when the market was very bullish and even euphoric, or that came again in early 2022. Those things did happen. Charts and profits and so on show that they happened. The fallacy here is believing that there is some kind of cycle. It could be that, yes, we had 2 bullish periods in the last year or so, and that's it. no more recognizable bull market. Maybe all the euphoric Ponzi mania got burned out in those 2 runs, and the rest is more like the steady, boring growth and maturing of a funding mechanism than like some sort of bubbly frenzy. This would mean that any projects that rely on this sort of enthusiastic, hyped up market to become successful are not going to make it. If there is a market, but no more bubbly times, that would mean that projects that are focused on delivering long-term value will be where the focus shifts eventually, rather than those that basically offer lottery tickets to people to see if they can sense the hype and turn 1 ETH into 10 ETH in a week. And maybe I'm wrong, and there will be more bull cycles like the ones that came before. I don't know. But that's the point. Nobody knows. And if you assume for sure that there will be another bull cycle, that might come back and haunt you. Or more likely, just cost you a lot of money. If you decide that the NFT market even exists, don't assume that it will behave in a cyclical way. Number 3, next bull cycle will be similar. Let's assume that there is an NFT market and that it does have some kind of cyclical behavior. It goes into bull and then it goes into sleep in a bear market, and then the euphoria comes back and it's back in bull mode again. What's the next blind spot? And this is a big one that I observe all over the space in many people who are very smart and pragmatic. And yes, I'm guilty of this one too. In case you haven't realized yet, I'm only pointing those out so accurately because I'm good friends with them myself. The third big bias is the belief that the same thing will happen in the next bull cycle that happened in the previous ones. This takes several forms, some more common than others. The least common, because people have wisened up a bit, is the belief that the exact same projects, or even a subset of the same projects, will pump during the next bull cycle. I think that belief lost a bit of traction when people saw that the projects that did well during the summer of 2021 did not do so well in the January 2022 bull. The next more common belief is a bias around certain projects, the infamous blue chips, which I've talked about in a Twitter thread that you can find linked in the description below. A lot of people believe that those projects will go back up during the next bull cycle. Even if there is an NFT market and it does have bull and bear cycles, there is no guarantee that any of these projects will go back up. They might, but they very much might not. Even BAYC, the exception that proves all the rules, might not go back up in price to its lofty heights of $350,000 per floor ape. Plan your investments accordingly. The next very common fallacy is the idea that the next big opportunity in NFT investment will come from projects that more or less follow the pattern laid down by BAYC, with some adjustments to make it more novel. Every meta since BAYC has followed in those footsteps. First, there was the animal pictures meta, the cute meta, the P2E casino meta, the we're actually raising money to do something meta, the actually shit meta. What's in common between all these metas? They all issued a few thousand profile picture NFTs and made money either from initial sales or withholding parts of the supply or royalties or some combination of the 3. And a lot of attention and effort is going into evaluating new projects to see if they're the vanguard of whatever the next meta is. But what if there is no next meta? At least not one involving recognizable PFP projects, whether they issue 1,000 or 10,000 PFPs. What if the next step is something completely different? Most people seem to assume that the next big thing will look similar, but there's no guarantee that this is so. Whilst I do think that fundraising via NFTs will become a thing, and I think that the model pioneered by BAYC could work well for this, I'm also bearing in mind that maybe it will be completely different. Trends, regulation, and just random changes could all cause sea shifts in the way that startups use NFTs for fundraising. Maybe the next wave won't look anything like the current one. So if you're looking for the next big thing to invest in, maybe broaden your horizon. Maybe it won't even be a project at all, let alone a PFP one with a few thousand randomly assembled images. The irony in all of this is that all this is happening in one of the most rapidly changing, hyper-disruptive fields in history. As people never tire of repeating, we're speedrunning the history of finance, of governance, of organizational design. Well, guess what happens when you're speedrunning? Things change, and fast. Web3 is all about disruption. It's about creating a new status quo that's better for more people around the world than the system of power concentrated in nation states that has dominated the last few hundred years. From the creation of a new supranational digital reserve currency to the reinvention of human society via network states, this thing we're a part of is big, possibly the biggest, most rapid wave of innovation in history. And yet, in this context, we want to cling to certainties. We want to cling to the existence of an NFT market, or bull and bear cycles, or what projects work and don't work. Well, yes, we want to, because we're humans. And as humans, we will cling to whatever certainties we can. And when there aren't any, we'll just make some up and cling to those. That's true even in Web3, where we really should know better. But it's kind of ironic that in this space that moves at 1,000,000 miles per hour, we are assuming that anything that started happening only in the last year or two will continue and happen again. So what do I want you to take away from this video? Well, Be aware of your assumptions. Question them. Be especially wary of anything that everyone knows to be true, especially in a space as fresh and full of disruption as Web3. Everything can change in the blink of an eye, so open your eyes and carefully poke at all those assumptions. If you don't, you'll be acting from a perspective that others have constructed for you, and that perspective will usually be designed to profit them, not you. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, tell everyone you know about it. Well, okay, maybe you don't have to go quite that far, but please do leave a comment and tell me what you liked about it. I'll try to make another one soon, and I love feedback. And in the meantime, GM, and good luck.